Picture this. AI that can compose a symphony, write a movie script, even answer your customer service calls.
Sounds like science fiction, right?
Yeah, but that future is already here thanks to what's called generative AI.
These algorithms are doing some pretty remarkable things, creating music, generating photorealistic images. The possibilities seem endless.
And on this deep dive, we're going to be focusing on how we can make sure these AI tools are reliable, that they actually work.
Which is where generative AI testing comes in.
Exactly. We've got this comprehensive guide on testing these applications, and we're going to break it all down for you so you can understand what it takes to build AI that, well, actually works.
It's an area that often gets overlooked, I think.
Right.
People get so caught up in the coolness factor of generative AI.
Right.
But testing is really the foundation for responsible AI development. I mean, without it, we're basically just flying blind.
Okay, so let's jump into it. When we talk about testing generative AI, what makes it so different from testing something like a regular app on your phone?
Well, with traditional software, it's all about predictability. You put something in, you expect a specific output.
Right.
Generative AI kind of throws a wrench in that. Because the same input or prompt can actually lead to different results every time. So then, how do we even define what the right answer is? Especially with something as subjective as art or writing.
Yeah, that's true. It's not like a simple right or wrong answer, is it?
Nope.
It's almost like you're evaluating a piece of art. There's room for, interpretation.
Exactly. And then there's also the issue of scale and performance. These AI models need to work in real time, often with like millions of users.
Yeah, think of a voice assistant that takes 5 minutes to answer a question.
Right.
No one's going to use that.
Not a happy user. So.
Okay. So let's imagine we're building a testing framework for generative AI. Where do we even begin?
Well, like any good testing strategy, you got to start with clear goals. What are we trying to achieve with this AI?
Okay.
Is it creativity we're looking for? Accuracy? Maybe something else entirely?
So establish those goalposts first, and then figure out how to actually measure if the AI is hitting those targets.
Yeah. We need metrics that actually match those objectives. Like, let's say we're testing a chatbot.
Okay.
We might measure things like fluency, accuracy, even how human-like the responses sound.
And I imagine those metrics could be wildly different depending on what the AI is actually being used for.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A chatbot for customer service is going to have totally different measures of success than, say, an AI writing poetry.
Right, of course.
So once we have those metrics, the next step is to design test scenarios.
Okay, what kind of scenarios are we talking about?
It's all about variety. See how the AI handles the common use cases, of course. But we also need to test those weird edge cases.
The what?
Those strange inputs, the unexpected stuff that might trip it up.
So it's like trying to think of all the ways someone could misuse or misunderstand the AI.
Pretty much, yeah. It could be
Okay.
a huge challenge.
I bet.
But thankfully, we've got tools to help us out. Automation is a lifesaver in this field, especially when we're dealing with huge amounts of data.
Okay. So automation helps us scale up that testing process, run through all those possibilities.
Exactly. But even with the best automation, it's important to remember that testing generative AI is not a set it and forget it kind of deal.
It's not.
No, because these models are constantly learning and changing, which means our testing has to keep pace. It's an ongoing thing, making sure the AI stays on track and meets those goals we set.
Right. Makes sense. So there are different types of testing we can use for generative AI, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We often hear about functional testing, performance testing, security testing. Can you kind of break down what those actually mean?
Sure. Let's start with functional testing. It's pretty much the most basic type. It's all about making sure that the AI actually does what it's supposed to.
Like if we have a chatbot that's supposed to give health advice, we need to make sure it's giving accurate and safe information.
Exactly. So, we might feed it all sorts of questions about symptoms and treatments, see how it responds. We'd also want to be sure it's got the right knowledge base, whatever its domain is.
So functional testing is all about making sure the core functionality is working right.
Yep.
But what about performance? We talked about real-time responsiveness, scalability.
Oh, performance testing is crucial, especially when you think about how these AI systems are working at such a large scale. They need to be able to handle real-time interactions with potentially millions of users.
Right.
We're talking about things like latency, scalability, and availability.
Okay. So latency is like how quickly the AI responds to a request.
Exactly. No one wants to wait 5 minutes for their voice assistant to answer a simple question.
No, definitely not. And scalability is about making sure the system doesn't crash when things get really busy.
Right, like when a popular new app launches
Right.
and a ton of users try to access it all at once.
You see those headlines about websites crashing all the time?
Exactly. We need to make sure that our AI systems are built to handle those situations.
And availability is about making sure that the AI is up and running whenever people need it.
Yeah, 2847.
Mm-hmm.
Like a reliable friend, always there to answer the call.
Okay, so we've got functional testing, performance testing.
Yeah.
What other types of testing are important for generative AI?
Well, security testing is a big one. These AI systems are often handling sensitive data,
Right.
and we need to make sure they're protected from things like data breaches, malicious attacks, all that.
Yeah, I can definitely see how security would be a major concern.
Absolutely. And, one way we test that is through injection testing.
What's that?
We deliberately try to feed the AI malicious inputs, see how it handles them. We want to be sure it can't be manipulated or exploited.
It's like trying to break the system to find its weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly. You said it better than me. So we can then go in and strengthen those weak points.
Okay. So far, we've covered functional testing, performance, security. What else do we need to think about when testing generative AI?
Hmm. Well, at the end of the day, we can't forget about the human element. All this technology is great, but it's useless if people can't use it.
Right.
Right.
So these tools need to be user-friendly, intuitive. People shouldn't get frustrated trying to use them.
Exactly. That's where user experience testing or UX testing comes in,
Okay.
making sure those AI applications are designed with the user in mind.
So things like making sure the AI's output is clear and easy to understand, the interface is intuitive, and the whole experience is actually enjoyable.
Exactly. We want people to feel comfortable interacting with AI,
Yeah.
not intimidated or frustrated. Like, think about a generative image tool.
Okay, so imagine I'm using an AI to make a picture, and I want a picture of a cat riding a unicorn through a rainbow.
Okay, sounds fun.
So good UX design would consider things like how easy is it for me to input that request? Does the AI understand what I'm asking?
Mm-hmm.
And then are the output options easy for me to understand and use?
Yeah, all important stuff.
Okay, so it's not just about the AI being able to create that crazy image.
Right.
It's about making the whole process smooth and enjoyable for the person using it.
Exactly. We want people to feel empowered by AI, not overwhelmed. It's like
Ugh.
the difference between assembling furniture with a confusing instruction manual versus having a helpful video tutorial guiding you every step of the way.
I get it. So good UX design can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's about designing AI that people actually want to use.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about why testing generative AI is so unique, the different types of testing that are out there,
Yeah.
and why it's so important to define clear goals from the start.
hmm It's a lot to take in, but it's all connected.
Yeah.
Testing generative AI really requires looking at all these different pieces.
Hmm.
Like building a house, you need that solid foundation, sturdy walls, a roof that doesn't leak. You can't just focus on one part and forget about the rest.
Great analogy. So I think now would be really helpful to look at some real world examples.
Yeah, I agree.
See how companies are tackling these testing
Just
challenges.
see how the pros do it.
All right, let's dive into some case studies.
So one of the most prominent examples out there is OpenAI's ChatGPT. It's a language model that's been getting a ton of attention for its ability to generate like incredibly human-like text.
ChatGPT, the chatbot that can write poems and code, even hold like philosophical debates. I've definitely played around with that one. How do they approach testing something like that?
Well, OpenAI has this massive testing framework for ChatGPT. Covers a bunch of different areas. Functional accuracy, ethical considerations.
Wow.
They even have teams of human reviewers who actually evaluate the AI's responses, looking for anything, from factual errors to potential biases.
So it's not just automated tests. They've
Yeah.
got actual people in the loop checking the AI's work.
Yeah, providing that human feedback. They understand that human judgment is still super important, especially when we're talking about language, the subtleties of human interaction. And they're constantly refining ChatGPT based on that feedback they're getting, using a technique called reinforcement learning.
So it's like a continuous learning process. The AI is always getting better based on that human input.
Exactly. And that's a key part of building trust with these systems. People need to know that, these technologies are being monitored, they're being improved.
Okay, so ChatGPT is all about language. What about AI that generates images? How do you test that?
Another really cool case study is DLEE2, also developed by OpenAI. This AI can create these crazy, realistic, and creative images just from text descriptions.
Oh, we've seen some of this stuff DLE2 can create. It's pretty mind-blowing. How do you even begin to test something like that?
Well, with DLE2, the testing involved both artistic and technical evaluation.
Okay.
So testers gave the AI all sorts of prompts just to see what it could come up with, and then they assessed those results, how well they matched the description, but also on things like the composition, the color palette, the overall aesthetic feel.
It's like a game of AI, draw me a picture of,
Yeah.
but with, like, a panel of art critics judging the results.
Yeah, I like that. They wanted to be sure the AI could handle all sorts of styles, all these different concepts, and make sure the images were both creative and, technically well executed.
So it's not just about making a pretty picture. It's about really capturing what that prompt is asking for
Yeah,
and translating it into a visually appealing image. And I guess this is where user experience testing comes in again, too,
for sure.
right? How easy is it for someone to actually use DLL2 to create the image they have in mind?
Yeah. How intuitive is that interface? All these things really matter. They're critical to whether the tool is successful or not.
So we've seen how companies like OpenAI are approaching this whole testing thing with generative AI. What's the main takeaway here from these real-world examples?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that testing isn't an afterthought. It has to be a core part of the development process.
Right.
And it needs this multifaceted approach, Think about functionality, performance, user experience, all of it.
Like building a car. You can't just throw an engine in there and call it a day. You got to test every part, every system.
Exactly. Make sure it all works together safely.
And just like a car needs regular maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Generative AI needs that continuous testing, that constant refinement. Make sure it's reliable and doing what it's supposed to do.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's not a one-time thing. Testing is this ongoing journey. Always got to be working to improve these AI creations.
It's a journey. So what's next? What's on the horizon for generative AI testing? What are the new frontiers?
Well, one thing that's getting a lot of attention is this idea of explainability.
Explainability.
As these AI models become more and more complex, it's harder to understand how they actually make decisions.
Okay, so it's like the AI gives you an answer, but you don't know how it got there?
Yeah, it's like a black box. And that can be a real problem in certain fields, like healthcare, finance.
Yeah, in those areas, you really need to understand the why.
Exactly. Imagine an AI making a medical diagnosis.
Right.
And we have no clue what its reasoning was. Kind of scary, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So researchers are now trying to come up with ways to make these AI models more explainable so we can see that decision-making process, make sure it's actually aligning with what we expect.
So it's almost like giving the AI a voice so it can tell us how it's thinking. And this ties into the idea of testing for fairness, too, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We talked about bias testing, but fairness testing goes even further. It's about making sure that what the AI produces is fair, even when there might be systemic biases out there in the real world.
So it's not just about taking out the biases that already exist in the data.
Right.
It's about building AI systems that promote fairness, even when the world itself isn't always fair.
Yeah, it's a much harder challenge, but it's essential if we want to build AI that really benefits everyone. Like, if an AI is helping to allocate resources, we need to be sure it's not just making existing inequalities worse.
So we're almost using AI as a mirror to reflect on our own values and biases as a society.
Yeah, it's a profound challenge.
It makes us ask some hard questions about what fairness even means and how we make sure these AI systems are ethical.
It highlights that testing generative AI, it's not just a technical thing.
It's not.
It's a societal thing, too.
It's a reflection of us.
Exactly. And as these technologies get more powerful, more common, the stakes are just going to get higher.
Right.
We need to be ready to ask the tough questions, challenge those assumptions, hold ourselves accountable for the AI we create.
It's a big responsibility, but it's also such an incredible opportunity. We have this chance to use AI to make the world more just, more equitable.
I agree.
But that doesn't just happen magically.
That takes effort.
We need to design these systems thoughtfully, with a commitment to ethical principles.
Couldn't agree more. We're at the beginning of a real technological revolution, and testing is a vital part of making sure that revolution is responsible, beneficial.
It feels like we're on the verge of something huge.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a really pivotal moment. And as we keep moving forward with generative AI, we have to be aware of how it's going to impact, society as a whole.
Which brings us to something a lot of people are worried about, right? The impact on jobs. I mean, as these AI systems become more capable, are they going to start automating jobs that humans currently do? Is that inevitable?
It's a valid concern,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a conversation we definitely need to have
Yeah.
openly and honestly. But while some jobs will likely be affected, it's important to remember that generative AI is also going to create new opportunities.
So it's not just about robots taking over?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Think about all the people who will be needed to design these systems, to develop them, implement them, maintain them. That's a whole new sector right there.
Okay. Yeah.
And maybe even more important, we're going to need people who can really think critically about the ethical side of things, the societal impact, guide the development, make sure it's being used responsibly.
So it's not just about having those technical
No.
skills. It's about critical thinking, creativity, being able to navigate those really complex ethical questions.
Yeah, those are uniquely human skills. And they'll be even more valuable in a world where AI is everywhere.
Which brings us to education. We need to prepare future generations for this AI-driven world.
Absolutely. It's not just about teaching them how to code,
Yeah.
it's teaching them how to think critically about AI, how to use it responsibly, how to collaborate with these intelligent systems.
I love that. AI literacy. It's
Yeah.
about understanding not just how AI works, but also its potential, its limitations, its ethical implications, being able to have those informed conversations about AI, ask the right questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We need citizens who can participate in shaping the future of AI,
Yeah.
hold decision makers accountable, make sure these technologies are actually used for good.
It's almost like we need a new social contract.
Yeah,
One that takes into account our rights and responsibilities in this rapidly changing tech landscape.
I like that. A new social contract.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a conversation that keeps going. A dynamic process, humans and machines, adapting and collaborating.
So it's not about just sitting back and watching as AI takes over.
Right.
We need to be active participants,
Yeah.
shaping its development, making
Yeah.
sure it reflects our values, our goals.
Exactly. The decisions we make now, they're going to determine the world we're going to live in tomorrow. And this brings us right back to testing.
Oh, okay.
It's not just a technical safeguard.
It's not.
It's a moral imperative, I think.
Making sure these AI systems are aligned with our values,
Yeah.
that they're doing what they're supposed to do, and that they're truly serving humanity.
Well said.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Give us that parting wisdom.
The future of AI, it's not set in stone. It's a tapestry. And we're weaving it together, thread by thread, choice by choice. And every single one of us has a role to play in how that turns out.
It's not about getting swept away by all this new technology. It's about choosing how we want to use it, guiding its development toward a future where AI helps us, empowers us to create a better world.
Beautifully put. The future of AI is in our hands. Let's make it a future worth having.
That's it for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this exploration of generative AI testing. Hope you found it insightful.
Remember, the future is not something that happens to us. It's something we create together.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, keep learning it.